first for you in this edition, then, Benjamin Netanyahu has accused the leaders of France, Britain, and Canada of emboldening Hamas, even saying that they are supporting, I quote, mass murderers, rapists, baby killers, and kidnappers. Now, those comments came after France, Britain, and Canada simply threatened to take concrete action against Israel if it refused to stop its latest offensive in Gaza. Well, in the face of a catastrophic situation in the Palestinian territory, Western leaders, once rather reticent to criticize Israel, have found it increasingly difficult to remain silent. Dozens more Gazans were killed in Israeli strikes over the past 2 days, including at least 23 people between Thursday and Friday alone. Take a listen.
We've been working here since dawn. This 5-story building was targeted, and there are a large number of people, including citizens who own these houses, under the rubble. According to estimates, more than 50 people are still under the rubble.
We were asleep when suddenly at 12 o'clock we heard the sound of bombing over the house. The children, their father and mother, as well as my husband and son were killed. They were innocent children. Their parents were poor and she was 7 months pregnant. 7 months pregnant.
Well, for more on this, Jonathan Crickx joins me now on set. He is the communications director for UNICEF Palestine. Jonathan, thank you so very much for your time and coming on the show today. Now, you got back from your latest mission to Gaza just about 10 days ago. Can you tell us what you saw there and perhaps how the situation now compares to past visits that you've taken there in over the past year and a half?
I mean, every time you go to the Gaza Strip, you see major devastation and really intolerable situations. But I must say that the last time I went there was really striking. I met with many children, injured children suffering from severe acute malnutrition. I met 10 of them, including a little baby, Siwar, who was 5 months old, and she's weighing barely a bit more than 2 kilos. And so the only thing for Siwa to get better that is needed is actually nutritious food, therapeutic, medical nutritious food that can help her to recover. But the problem is that we are running out. Apart from the few trucks that entered yesterday or the day before, we are very much in a situation where we are at the risk of famine in the Gaza Strip. So that's the reality. I went to supermarkets, shelves are empty. You can still find some food. You can still find potatoes, but it's costing 70 euros for 5 kilos of potatoes. A bag of diapers is costing more than 100 euros. So of course, most of the families simply cannot afford this.
How would you characterize the situation that children specifically are facing as, again, a representative of UNICEF across the territory? And I'll preface that by saying I understand that 29 children and elderly people died of starvation in the last 2 days alone. I mean, is famine then the biggest risk facing them?
I would not make a hierarchy of the risks, because in the past 2 months, and according to the Ministry of Health in the Palestinians, so in Gaza Strip, but also in Ramallah, they are indicating that more than 1,000 children were killed in more than 2 months. I met many of these injured children, and it is absolutely horrifying what a half-a-ton bomb can do on a 4-year-old body. What I want to say here is that not only you have the issue of malnutrition, the issue of the bombardments, but you also have major challenges. No hygiene, very poor sanitation, low vaccination rate since the beginning of the war. We're talking about more than 180 babies who were born every day. So it's a perfect recipe. We have seen the emergence of polio last year. So the overall situation with the dozens of children I have seen barefoot with black teeth, with rashes on their skin, carrying a metal pot and queuing, dozens and dozens of children queuing to get a little bit of food. When I ask them, they're telling me one day they perhaps get a little bit of rice, another day they might be a little bit of bread. That was 10 days ago, and very often nothing at all. So this is a situation which is extremely concerning.
I mean, in listening to you, because you've been on the ground there several times, what do you make of the Israeli military's claim that stopping this aid is to essentially prevent Hamas from exploiting these resources and using them for its own interests.
Let's talk about what UNICEF brings in, perhaps. So what are we bringing in? We're bringing incubators for premature babies. We're bringing very tiny, high energy biscuits full of proteins to treat malnutrition. We are bringing little packs of baby milk also to treat malnutrition. We are bringing breastfeeding kits for mothers. We're bringing soap. There is very little soap. So the question that one can wonder, we're bringing vaccines. You know, sometimes I struggle to understand how this can be used in an armed conflict.
You visited hospitals, refugee camps, schools on your trips, all places that you think would obviously, and actually under international law, should be spared hostilities. They're regularly targeted. Is there any part of the Gaza Strip now that's safe for children or the rest of the population at large?
For the past 18 months, there is not a single place in the Gaza Strip that can be considered safe. I can tell you that when you're in the Gaza Strip, when I move from one place to the other in the so-called safe zones, we have seen strikes, we have seen incidents. So the thing is that it is an illusion to think that any place is safe in the Gaza Strip today.
In the face of this blockade that had been in place since March 2nd, what, if any, assistance have NGOs or other groups been able to provide to those suffering most, including children, prior to the blockade being lifted, so to speak, yesterday?
So what we have been able to do is actually quite a lot despite the supplies. The supplies are critical and they can be life savings, like for the little baby Siwar, 5 months old. So I'm not minimizing supplies, but yet what we also have been able to do is to produce water. Thousands and thousands of liters of potable water that are distributed to the communities. We are supporting in mental health and psychosocial support. I mean, 1.1 million children are in need of mental health support. What is it, 1.1 million? It's every child in the Gaza Strip today needs mental health and psychosocial support. We have been able to support 300,000 of them. And we're also doing temporary learning spaces. It's a tent among the tents, and children can come and they do a little bit of math, a little bit of reading and writing, and they can be a child just for a few hours. And we have been able to support more than 100,000 of these children. But the problem is the funding is also lacking. And we are now in a situation where we are just talking about a few trucks, a few cartons, which were just food. But what about their mental health? What about their education? What about their physical health? What about the treatment when the little Hanin I met with, 5-year-old, she lost her 2 legs. She also lost her mother. And so what is it that the world can do to support a little girl like that?
I mean, that is a question for organizations like UNICEF. What is it concretely that you expect the international community to do, at least in the short term?
I mean, I was in Gaza last Monday. And last Monday, we have seen the release of Idan Alexander, an American-Israeli hostage, which was after 20 months of horrible living conditions in as an hostage, was freed. It's possible to release the hostages, and all the hostages must be reunited with their families. And at the same time, a ceasefire, which was negotiated between the parties, must be reinstated. There must be a ceasefire reinstated. And ultimately, and I would say urgently, when I see so many children affected by malnutrition, hungry, thirsty children, humanitarian aid must enter at scale. 600 trucks were entering every day during the ceasefire. I have seen 20, 30, 40 trucks in the past 2-3 days. I mean, how can that be sufficient to support the survival, the lives of 1.1 million children?
And that's just talking about the short-term effects. I imagine that the long-term effects, as you mentioned earlier, require even more resources. Jonathan Crickx, that's unfortunately all we have time for, but thank you so very much for coming on the program today.
Thanks for having me.